This is the KJ Singh Show with your host KJ Singh. So Sam Harris has done it again. He said the most psychopathic thing behind his monotone voice and behind this aesthetics of intellectualism. He says the most anti-intellectual, the most politically decontextualized statements, such as saying that Hamas are worse than the Nazis, which is kind of a hyperbolic statement you would hear from somebody with a pubescent understanding of politics. But this is a man who's, esteemed to be an intellectual. This is, he gives off, and of course, I obviously was a fan of Sam Harris, for those who know, for a while. And there are books out of his that I would recommend, such as his books on free will. And when he questions, the basis for God, for example, there is an argument to be made, especially when he talks about, rule-based utilitarianism, where, reduction of harm, maximization of kindness and happiness. I think that's really good. But a bit like, other meditators of the past, such as those Zen masters who were, supporting the kamikaze pilots, there is a blind spot in Sam Harris which leads him to say the most psychotic things, such as saying that a resistance group, which I don't agree with, but it is a completely, a consequence of Israel's foreign policy, is worse than Nazis, which is both Holocaust revisionism, but also a complete, grift, because of course it is the moment. It's the moment to make statements about Hamas and the political situation, and it's also a way to get attention, because it's really factually incorrect, and quite laughable. It would be laughable if he didn't have such a huge reach, and a bit like Jordan Peterson is an idiot's guide to being a philosopher, Sam Harris is kind of the idiot psychopath's guide to being an intellectual. And before I continue, I'm going to showcase one of my shorts, which I did on the subject, and then we'll talk about why it's so wrong. His reasoning is so factually and historically and politically incorrect. Listen to this morally and factually questionable individual.
Now, Hamas is a jihadist organization. In my view, that's all we need to know about it. The question of how it got that way is fundamentally uninteresting. It would be like asking in 1941 how the SS became so radicalized. In fact, jihadists are worse than Nazis, in my view.
If that's true, what does that make Benjamin Netanyahu, who boasts about supporting Hamas as a way to thwart the establishment of the Palestinian state? Or Bezalel Smotrich, who says that Hamas are an asset compared to the liability of the Palestinian Authority in delegitimizing the Palestinian state? The reality is that Sam Harris is trying to shoehorn his careerist and attention-seeking grift into a political and historical reality that he does not understand. Now, I'm not friends of Hamas or any religious fundamentalism, but by his logic, any resistance to an oppressive regime can be considered worse than Nazis just by the very nature of their methods used, and that is intellectually and morally weak. So clearly, Sam Harris has no understanding of the political reality, the historical reality, but also psychology, because it's within psychology of people to exert some self-determination. And Hamas is an expression of such a self-determination. The fact that, they are, they have some, religious fundamentalism is merely a way to cajole, to bring people together for a call to action. But it's not the main fundamental reason they're there. Hamas are a consequence of the fact that Palestine has been colonized by an external party. And this external party has not made any real concessions to the indigenous people that are living there. And so naturally, Hamas are born out of the embers. But also the fact that, Israel government in the form of, Netanyahu, of right-wing leaders, they've called Hamas an asset because, of course, by focusing on Hamas, you can thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state. And so it works as both a response to Israel's own bombardment of the Palestinian people and the barbaric reality that is imposed on the Palestinians, and also they can be used as a scapegoat to enrich is now being used to commit a genocide. And the psychology is very important because before Hamas got into power in the Gaza Strip, the most this is this is before they got into power. The most traumatized children on the planet were in Gaza, according to a report in 2005. Hamas took power in 2006, 2007. And so when you consider the domino effect, cause and effect, something that Sam Harris should be aware of, considering he studied Buddhism, that cause and effect is such a huge causality, such a huge aspect of Buddhism. It's interesting that he would suddenly throw that understanding that which is very much overlooked in politics, very much overlooked in our common colloquial communication about politics and the causes of issues. He suddenly throw that out for some extreme right wing foreign policy. He calls himself a liberal, but there's really nothing liberal about genocide, which is what he's really is the conclusion of his rhetoric. That is the only conclusion that can be made. Because if the mere resistance against occupation is something that is worse than Nazism, because of course there is no perfect victim, there's no perfect resistance, and I don't agree with what Hamas did on October 7th, but nothing arises in a vacuum. They're merely a response to some threat that came externally, that was imposed on them. Just remember, when the blockade was imposed on the Gaza Strip, 70% of factories had to close. And now more than 50%, well, prior to October 7th, 50% of people were unemployed. So the economy was at a standstill, and trauma, where it's already very, at a high level, as skyrocketed. Just the very day-to-day affairs, and also the fact that Israel has been committing atrocities on a daily basis, even whilst there's a ceasefire prior to October 7th, where 2023, in 2023, the most, which was the most number of children being killed, unalived, by Israel of all the years recorded. So when you consider that possibility, that despite the fact that there was a ceasefire in effect, that the Palestinians were still under the foot of the Israel occupation, but also suffering the consequences of this systemized form of barbarism, then what do you expect? What do you expect? I mean, I would, if somebody came to me with fundamentalist ideas, I would obviously try and talk them out of it, but I also understand the basic law of cause and effect. And if you can only, try and delegitimize them, but if you were to ignore cause and effect and also use your arguments as a way to justify the complete eradication of the people, because what you're trying to do is completely distance yourself from the reality that there are humans who are angry, very traumatized, and want to use their anger and trauma and the killing of their family members and the whatever oppression that they're undergoing, and distance yourself from their humanity and throw it all under the blanket of religious fundamentalism, which is such a simplistic, anti-intellectual, morally depraved and stupid way to go about understanding political reality. And Sam Harris does not understand political reality. There's so much more to say. I mean, the fact that Sam Harris is a man who released an article that was in favor of torture just says it all, really. He doesn't care about accuracy. He doesn't care about truth, which is kind of what you get. You get results from torture, but the results you get aren't accurate, nor they are truthful, according to experts in the field. It seems like Sam Harris is really a psychopath, or rather exhibits traits of psychopathy, in that he does not understand, he does not empathize with those people who have receiving end of collective punishment, bombardment, collateral damage, which of course, what do you expect when, a family has been completely wiped out because there's somebody in the area which, without a third party verification, we have to, accept the view of the entity that is committing a genocide. Make that make sense. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.